This is my Danish Krag Jorgensen Engineer's Carbine. It's a model 1889/17, and these are incredibly rare. The Danish only made 4,000 of them, and ever since I heard of them, I've only ever seen 2 for sale, and that's including this one here. This was a lucky find on a forum classified section, and it happened to be a local deal for me. But this isn't how I found it. This is actually a full-blown restoration, even more so than my Norwegian Krag Carbine series. Go check that out if you haven't seen it. But unfortunately with this restoration, I didn't get any of it on video. The regret is what spawned my channel. I originally intended to document the Norwegian Krag restoration and share some tips along the way. But I still feel like the story of this rifle should be told, so I'm filming this to walk through what I did to turn it into this, from this. And this is how it looked when I bought it. The stock had been cut down, all the front end hardware missing, and the middle band reshaped. The butt plate was replaced by a pad, and the sides of the stock were crudely thinned to match it. The whole thing had been sanded, unfortunately removing the markings from the unit disc, and the whole stock was finished with polyurethane, apparently while the action was still in the stock since the poly was stuck on the metal as well. But the good news was that the barrel wasn't cut, nor were the sights modified, and it truly was an engineer's carbine, as those were marked with a stylized I serial number prefix. The only piece of metal that was modified was the bolt handle, which was cut and then re-welded on. Originally these were straight. To restore this rifle to its original configuration, I knew that I was going to have to make the parts myself. The stock, handguard, front band, stacking swivel, and bayonet lug. I did try to track these parts down, but with these being unique to such a rare rifle, making them was my only option. The stockmaking followed the same process that I used in my Norwegian Krag restoration. I started with an 8/4 piece of walnut lumber and slowly inlaid it for the action. And once the action was fully into position, I used acro glass to bed the rear receiver tang, which on Danish Krags is squared off to bear the recoil. I then worked on the exterior, shaping the stock to match the areas of the sporter stock that I could tell were unmodified. I drilled a hole for the stock disc using a custom-made drill bit, just the right size. But the front end of the stock was much more difficult as I didn't know how large to make things or where to place things along the barrel. On the Norwegian Krag, I had the front nose cap and the band, so at least I knew how big the stock needed to be at both of those areas, but here I didn't. I turned to pictures for reference, but again with how rare these rifles are, I could only find a handful of pictures that were both high-res and taken from dead-on angles. To measure, I put them into an image editor and measured pixels, comparing that to known measurements. For example, when determining where to place the barrel band on the stock, I compared the distance in pixels to the length of the receiver. Because I knew the receiver was 5.785 inches long and measured 435 pixels in the picture, the distance from the handguard retainer to the middle band is 804 pixels. Using both of those, I can calculate the pixels per inch, and then finally the measurement needed, which equals 10.695 inches. I do this across multiple pictures when I could, averaging the results, and then I repeat the process for as many dimensions as I needed. I also had 2 fixed points, as I like to call them, when it came to the front end. I knew that the bayonet would need to fit, so I knew roughly how far to place the front band back from the muzzle. And I also had the middle band. Though it was misshapen, once I restored it to an oval shape, I could use that to help tell some measurements. Although I had to take guesses as far as how much of an oval it is, whether it was taller, which also made it narrower, or if it was shorter, which also made it fatter. The metal parts followed the same measurement process with the exception of the bayonet lug, which I already had a lot of the measurements from since I already had the bayonet that would fit it. The front band is made from 2 turned pieces, split in half and then welded, the top of one to the bottom of another, with spacers in between to make it an oval shape. You can see how much grinding went into it to turn it from this into this. And the slot on the bottom was cut with a slitting saw, which I made an arbor for it to use in my lathe. I also used it to slot the screw head for the front band screw. The bayonet lug was probably the hardest part of the whole rifle to make. I agonized from the beginning how I was going to make it. The difficult part was that the slots ended with a scallop. I didn't know how I was going to cut it since I don't own a milling machine. But one day it just clicked in my head to try cutting it with a T-slot cutter in my lathe. I created this setup with the slot cutter and the chuck, and the stock held in the quick change tool post. I have no Z-axis travel, so I had to set my height and cut it in one pass. And to my surprise, it worked very well, probably due to the free machining steel that I used, but also because I went very slow and used a lot of oil. The next pass was more difficult because it was climb cutting, but it still worked very well. The final difficult part was the concave shape on top of it. I used a similar setup in the lathe, but with a cove router bit matching the barrel diameter. This I could feed in slowly and it went pretty easily. And from there I shaped the piece that goes inside the front band, and an extra piece that goes further into the stock for reinforcement. I actually could never find a picture of the bayonet lug out of the stock by itself, but I knew I wanted this part to be as strong as possible since the bayonet is a lot of weight extending far out from the rifle. And with a few extra odds and ends, the band spring sourced from Mauser parts, the butt plate from a Norwegian long rifle that's close to the Danish in look, and the stacking swivel made just like the one on my Danish long rifle, the rifle was done. It really made me more confident that not only could I tackle a project like this, but that I could film it and show it to others. So with that, thanks for watching.